Hello and welcome to Seeing Red. It is June 4th, 2024. I am Will Leitch here, as always, with the great Bernie Miklasz. I come to you live from St. Simon's Island, Georgia. That's where I am for the week. I just turned in my book, Bernie, my new novel, tentatively titled The 10 Gentle Edicts of Lloyd McNeil, but will probably be titled something shorter at some point. Just turned in, so I'm in vacation mode.
I look forward to meeting Mr. What's his name, McNeil?
Lloyd McNeil.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to meeting him.
Detective Lloyd McNeil, actually.
All right.
We'll get into more of that as we get a little closer. But I'm on vacation this week. My wife is an interior decorator. She is decorating a house. We are staying there for free while she works, and my children lie about the pool like the lieabouts that we are. But we got here last night listening to the Cardinals loss to the Astros. My son and I listened to that all along our drive. Got excited and then got grumbly. But I feel like before we get into the details of last night's game, I kind of want to do a little check here for where the Cardinals are. It is worth noting that because of basically what was a season-saving run there against the Cubs, Red Sox, and Orioles, they are, even though they are 2 games under 500, they are currently tied for the wild card spot. Now, I've been writing at MLB.com, my colleagues as well, about how the National League has 4 really good teams and then a bunch of other teams that are all close. And the Cardinals, because they got on that run, now get to be one of those other teams. But they're currently tied with the reeling Cubs for that 3rd spot and a game and a half behind the Padres. I'm curious, when you look at the Cardinals, I actually thought 1 out of 3 in Philadelphia is that's a really good team that's smoking hot right now. And I actually thought Sunday's win was pretty impressive and a pretty good, kind of blueprint for how the Cardinals want to win games. Monday's game was also a blueprint about how they want to win games, except they lost it. Yes. And I think that leads to the overarching question. By the way, seeingredpod@gmail.com. Take us follow us at seeingredpod on Twitter/X. It does seem to me, I'm curious, what did you think? I think the way they want to win games is kind of the way they did it Sunday and Monday. They enough power, enough pop from that lineup, and then enough starting pitching, and then the bullpen shutting it down. The bullpen did not shut it down on Monday. We can argue about Marmol's choices or so on, but they did shut it down on Sunday. That, however, I think the thing that I find encouraging, as much as they've lost 3 out of 4, is it feels like you can see what the blueprint is now. You looked at last year's team, you thought, I have no idea how this is going to work. The things they're going to work on, specifically the defense, but I understand how this team wins games now, and that's not something I understood last year.
No, totally. They're much better organized this season. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I mean, there's more talent in the bullpen, and Marmol he's really tried to avoid becoming overly dependent on Romero, Kittredge, and Helsley. You know, he's given more of a role to Kyle Leahy. He's given a really big role, justifiably so, to John King. We know that Liberatore looks really good in relief. So he's got a lot to work with there. And I'm sure we'll get into the second guess. I just have one point to make about that with Romero, because I think people are missing a larger point. But there was a point in time in that inning where I would have gone with Leahy, and I'll explain, once we get through this. But the bullpen's, much better organized, and it's much deeper. And I think Marmol deserves credit for cultivating more depth, the way he's given more substantial roles to the 2 guys. And we could add Liberatore, Leahy, and King. That's really good. The problem that and listen, the starting pitches are who they are. Hopefully, Palante will have another good start tonight. We'll see how it turns out. But the rotation pretty much, the 5th spot is still very, very questionable, to say the least. But the other 4 spots are pretty much what we thought they would be, and that's fine. It's fine. The problem they have, and this has nothing to do with the manager, even though people will blame him for anything. With Nootbaar out again, the IL for the 5th time since the start of last season. They do not have an outfield that all season long is producing much offense. So I think that creates a situation where when you got Goldie and Arenado, who aren't the same, a little better with Goldie, but not the same from a power department. And then you've got the outfield is kind of like I'm not going to say an empty spot because Burleson's done fine, Donovan's fine, but just as a group, it's a terrible hitting outfield, 207 this year. So he has very limited choices, and that bothers me going forward. You really can't, I hate to say it, man, but you really can't count on Nootbaar to stay healthy. You just can't. Carlson doesn't hit. Ciani, I love watching him play, but he doesn't hit. Donovan still seems to me like he's confused about, whoa, am I a power hitter? Do I just slap the ball the other way? Do I draw walks? What do I do? He seems to have lost his identity. And they just don't have much behind them. And so there is a glaring lack of depth, and there is a real huge problem in terms of offense with their outfield. Those are two pretty big deals. And that said, I don't sneer at the fact that they're in contention for a wild card spot. People can sneer all they want. The Cardinals didn't set up the system. There's 3 wild cards. It gives you a chance. So they have a chance. They're in the hunt, and I think they're a much more interesting team now. But the problems remain. I think that's pretty clear as well.
If there's one motif of this podcast since we started doing it quite a few years ago now, Bernie.
Yes, sir.
They just can't figure out the outfield. No matter what.
Goodness.
No matter what. And listen, whatever. I tend to think a lot of the discussion of the Cardinals trade away these outfielders right as they get good. That's a little overstated, and I think that sometimes that becomes like a cudgel that people kind of want to blast them with. It's not like you've got multiple time All-Stars that are just like Arozarena's been the best, and the Rays are looking potentially to trade him right now, right?
Right, that's right.
Adolis Garcia has been up and down, but certainly it's not like Adolis Garcia that the Cardinals put him on waivers and nobody claimed him. So it's not like Garcia was a guy that the Cardinals just let go for nothing. So, and frankly, the best hitting former Cardinals outfielder right now is Richie Palacios.
Right.
and I will take Kittredge, by the way. I'm totally comfortable with that deal. And so the point is that I have a hard time. The whole issue when I look at the outfield, because it is frustrating, but at a certain level, I don't know. I don't think it's unreasonable for the Cardinals to have expected Dylan Carlson to be better than he is right now.
Yeah.
Jordan Walker to be better than he is.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Listen, there is an issue of, if you want to have an argument about whether the Cardinals should have done a better job of developing these guys or putting these guys together, but at a certain level, particularly Carlson, man. Carlson, I thought Carlson was going to be an all-star. So to be entirely honest with you, I thought I was very high on Carlson for a period of time, and now he looks like I think I trust Ciani at the plate more than I trust Carlson. I don't really trust Ciani at all there. So I think we're coming to a breaking point with Carlson. I do kind of feel like at a certain level, I think he's out of options. I don't think you could sit him down even if you wanted to, but I don't know what you do with him because he's not useful at all. And I think the Nootbaar problem, it feels his injuries are always a little bit different. Like with O'Neill, you always feel like if he goes too hard, he's going to yank something or he's going to pull something or so on. Nootbaar's feel more random, but they still keep happening, right? And it's worth noting that the minute Nootbaar went on the lineup, you still oh, right, now the outfield is in trouble again. And so I don't know how much you can blame the Cardinals for Nootbaar getting hurt all the time, Carlson completely falling off the planet, Walker not really progressing. Maybe that's the one you blame the most is Walker because he kind of got yanked around a little bit. But I have and Donovan being in between, as you kind of talk about, I have a hard time looking at the Cardinals. Listen, I love to criticize the Cardinals. It's one of my favorite things to do. Not as much fun as watching them win, but I love to criticize the Cardinals. I got no beef with that. But I have a hard time looking at the outfield situation and being well, this is what they obviously did wrong. I don't want to hear anybody tell me that, look, of course O'Neill's hitting well over there. He's on the IL again, by the way.
Yeah, he hasn't hit. Even before that, he had stopped hitting.
Yeah, to me, it kind of just looks like, if anything the Cardinals are guilty of, it's something that, frankly, we're all probably guilty of as fans, which is thinking this outfield was going to be good. I think we really did. I thought the Cardinals outfield was stacked. I thought they had depth. I thought they could afford to trade guys away, and just none of them have really panned out. including the ones that they've traded. And I think that's one of the weird things about the whole outfield situation.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Neil, by the way, before he got hurt again, his like for the 22 games before that, it was at 159 with 2 home runs and 40 strikeouts. So
we've seen those skits many times.
And Lane Thomas is a nice player, but he's not exactly blasting it away this year. They may trade him to the Nationals or whatever. Again, that's a subject that even though I have participated in it, so I don't want to be a hypocrite. I'm acknowledging that, I've been part of the discussion, but I'm really by now kind of fatigued. Just like there's this constant like accounting and reviewing of like all the outfielders that got away, or it's like we look. That's not going to change a thing right now, and what they've got to do is somehow squeeze more offense out of this outfield with the players that they have. And I think it's easy to blame the front office for everything, and they deserve a lot of blame. There's a lot of responsibility there, and they have made mistakes. There's no question about it. But I'm a big believer in this as well. The players have to perform. We know that Jordan Walker is more talented than what he appeared to be this season. And even in Memphis until the last few days or so, he hasn't been doing anything. I mean, we know that Carlson's got ability because we saw it. We know what a number of these guys, we know that Burleson's got talent. Some of that's starting to shine through. And I could go right down the list. The point is, these guys should be doing better than they are. And I think that part really gets lost because the reflex action is always bad front office, bad manager. It's okay to say, wait a minute. There's no excuse for Jordan Walker going off the cliff the way he did. And to lay that off on someone else, to me, it's just kind of cheap. Same with Carlson. I don't get it. I mean, I've got
in particular.
Yeah,
they've kind of yanked Walker around a little bit.
Well,
Carlson has had every opportunity.
But how did they yank Walker around?
Just defensively,
but he got better defensively.
Yeah, I know.
And then at the start of the season, I mean, it was a very popular topic. He would be a big breakout star of the season.
There was just a lot of debates on is he getting the ball in the air? And everybody sent him down last year, and he said he didn't change anything.
But then he did start to hit the ball in the air. So that part got our mutual friend Dane Perry wrote about that. He really did improve that area. And so coming into 2024, it looked like, okay, he's got this thing figured out. And it's like, what the heck happened? I'm not going to lay that off on a hitting coach or a manager. I'm just not going to do that. I refuse to do that because, I just think that's just way too easy. The player knows what he has to do. If he doesn't want to do it, then that's his fault, so whatever.
And also, I it's funny because Herrera has not been, of course, Herrera's been perfectly fine at the plate, but I do feel like it's a cascading thing from Contreras, right? Because if Contreras were playing, you could theoretically, like right now, you could put him at DH, right, and put Herrera there, and then put Burleson in the outfield or something. Like one of the reasons, Burleson's the DH right now. If Carpenter were hitting better, by the way, that would have been a nice time for a hit from him last night. By the way, Carpenter's in a huge struggle right now. There are a lot of little different parts that come into the fields being as thin as they are right now, and part of it's Newbar being hurt, part of it's Walker and Carlson falling off the cliff, part of it's the fact that Ciani can't hit, part of it's that Edman is, who knows, and whenever we're going to see Edman again, a lot of that means you have to put Burleson at DH. You have to put Burleson at first. He could be an outfielder that's hitting as well. Not having Contreras in the lineup, I think, actually affects the outfield, if that makes a certain amount.
No, it does. I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of different things there, and so that leads to the question: if I see one more independent fan-cited post showing up on my Google feed, remember when Google was helpful? Remember when Google was helpful and you could look and I'd search Google and the New York Times or the St. Louis Post-Dispatch or those things would come up. Now there's 80 fan-sided posts. But it's
a lot. I alternate between just laughing out loud because it's so funny and entertaining, and then the next day when there's 20 other posts about how they need to trade 17 players or whatever.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And then I'm like, gosh, will someone just
Yeah.
calm down.
And send Google, and then
You know, it's just,
Google's going to give a robot to tell him, give me the same useless information.
well, that's exactly right. Yeah.
But you do hear occasional, like, when you like, do you? I've heard people say, first off, I would say of the last 10 years, Tommy Pham remains one of my favorite Cardinals. I truly
Yeah.
love Tommy Pham. I don't see that for a variety of reasons. One, because Pham, he's got a lot of opinions, and sometimes that bothers the Cardinals. But I would love to have him back. More to the point, though, I don't know what trading for Pham. I think potentially, and I know this is a weird thing to say because I feel like we say this around the outfield all the time, like a log jam. How do they figure this stuff out? But if you bring in someone like Pham, you expect him to play, or bring in some other outfield, you expect them to play. That's basically saying, I don't think Nootbaar is going to be, you can't count on Nootbaar, or you don't think Edmonds ever coming back, or you don't think Walker's ever coming back. Like, I kind of don't know what the option really they can do other than hope that Nootbaar and Edmond get healthy, hope Walker starts hitting. Like, a big part of it is that, like, Siani has to be in center field every day, and he can't hit. Siani's, like, asking Siani to be a hitter is asking too much of him. I guess that's too much. You should not ask him to be, you have to just accept that he is not a hitter, and he's your center fielder. That's great and all, but the problem is, if the other guys aren't hitting, he gets a lot more exposed.
That's right. Because like if things had gone the way they should have gone, or the way that, when I say best case scenario, and this is not like a dream scenario, it's just like a logical best case scenario. They would have Walker in one corner and Nootbaar in the other corner, and then you're like, well, okay, and Burleson mixed in there, and then you could say, well, it's actually makes a lot of sense to use a defensive specialist in center field, but they don't, they still have to do it, but it's sort of a luxury now that's not ideal, because of what you said. He's just not very good offensively. But my gosh, this outfield offensively, they're either 28th or 29th in every offensive category. It's unbelievable. So, and I was crying, not really, but I was crying reviewing some of those Cardinals outfields that we have enjoyed so much, during the Bill DeWitt era. Some of the monsters, they just were monsters out there. It's just kind of a shame to see it disintegrate into what it is now.
And yet I still find myself looking at him going, I don't know, you can still see it though, right? Like, you can still see, again, if Carlson, I mean, if I still feel like there's I don't know about Edmund. We'll see, but I have like
Yeah, I
an
don't
injury
know.
update about him for a while. But at a certain level, the idea of I still believe Walker is going to be a good hitter
I
someday.
think so.
I still feel like I'm not quite off I'm not quite off Nootbaar as a guy that is going to be able to play. Or if you have to put Burleson out there because Contreras come back, it doesn't seem to me that their outfield, you need to make some dramatic move. I don't necessarily feel like they need to make some dramatic move in the outfield, because I know it's frustrating because we've seen them spin the wheels. To me, the dramatic move is when Nootbaar gets healthy and if Walker starts hitting, do you say no more Carlson? At a certain level, if I'm ready to cut bait on anyone, I feel like it's ready to be Carlson. Not only is he not hitting, he looks like tight. Like, players are supposed. Remember the idea you're supposed to put brawn on yourself when you get through the major leagues. Carlson looks like small and weak. This is a guy we thought was going to have some pop, and you look at him now. You don't trust Carlson to play center. Remember, that's the reason they traded Bader, because they thought Carlson could play center. He's not hitting at all. To me, I as someone that was the last person on the Carlson train, I think I'm off.
No, he does look frail, and he is not physically strong. And again, this is where I stick up for the Cardinals on certain things. I mean, we saw Carlson his first full season in 2021. He had a nice slugging percentage, and then after the All-Star break, he slugged like over 500. So the strength was there. Hitting the ball hard used to be there. They've given him, and listen, I'm willing to testify to this. The Cardinals have given him all kinds of plans to increase his body mass and strength. It's not like they're just letting this go. They've been on him.
They see it.
Yeah, they've been on him. They're trying to do what they can. There's something ain't right about him. I don't know what it is. Now he's got his father's a big time coach in California. Maybe his father's telling him to do different things. I don't know. but it's a mess. And I'm like you. If you were the last holdout on the Carlson train, I I was in the I was somewhere in the passenger car. I was there too. But no, I've seen enough. But what are you going to do? I don't. What do you do? Just cut ties? I don't know. But yeah, it's just kind of he's cut. I had a friend of mine that texted me the other night, and my friend's not a vicious guy. He's not a cheap shot guy like me, for example. And he just said, man, I loved Carlson so much, and he said. I look at him now and he said, I wonder two things. What the hell happened? And the other thing he says, it's just depressing. It's like, I don't like watching him. It's depressed. The guy like brings me down just to watch him on TV. And I feel that sentiment. I really do.
It's a bummer because I really thought he was, I mean, I did think he was going to be an all-star. No, let's start with someone I was also wrong. I was wrong about, and you were right about, Burleson. To me, Burleson is a guy that's got to be like he's homered in 2 straight games. I'm gonna get into Gorman in a moment.
He's coming into his own. He is,
and I do feel like I was very hesitant about Burleson for a long period of time, but he's hitting the ball well now. And Gorman, on one level, I want to see like Gorman. Obviously, we see what he is when he's hot. We also see what Gorman is when he's not hot. And I'd like to see a little bit more consistency from Gorman, but when he's on like this, I think that's what's really exciting. He made an error last night and did not end up costing him, though I thought it might. But I do want to bring this up, and I think this is a great question that we got. Excuse me, from Shabran Riaz, whose name I pronounced correct before, but I think I'm pronouncing wrong now because Ron, every time you have to email me, you just have to give me the name correct. He says, "Am I only one noticing all the incessant errors this team, especially from Wynn? I understand you boot more balls if you get to more balls, but he has missed playing a lot. Eric Longenhagen, who I believe is from Fangraphs or maybe Baseball Prospectus, has always rated his hands average or below average, and it is showing. Not so much Wynn, who." Oh, by the way, I feel a little too young to be having back issues. That makes me a little nervous, actually.
Yeah.
But Wynn is obviously, I think Wynn's been the best player on this team. What do you think of the errors? Like, I feel like it's cost him not quite as much as you might have expected it to, but certainly on the edges, this is a team that doesn't have a lot of margin for error. The defense, I thought, was one of the strengths at the beginning of this year, but the errors are becoming a serious problem.
It stinks right now. Listen, the Cardinals do everything right defensively in terms of positioning their fielders, having a good book on opponents. They have a really good, scouting report based on, spray charts and everything else where they should station their guys. The Cardinals are above average when it comes to defensive positioning. So again, this is not something that I think is fair or even rational to somehow blame the coaches and the manager for. The players got to make plays. We know that Gorman has become much better fielder. We know that Wynn's got dynamic talent. We know that Nolan Arenado is considered one of the greatest defensive third basemen of all time. He is absolutely terrible this year defensively. Is that Marmol's fault? Would Marmol ruin him? No, I don't think so. There's just a lot of carelessness out there. You can understand it with the rookie Wynn. He's very aggressive. I like that aggressiveness, but he seems too jumpy here lately. But listen, man, they've given up 37 unearned runs. That's tied for 4th most in the majors. And in their last 12 games, they've given up 16 unearned runs. And in those 12 games, over 35% of the runs scored against them have been unearned. And they've been fortunate to win as many of those games as they have, because this has become a real problem. I mean, this is a huge issue now. I mean, way too many errors, way too many unearned runs. And it's because of carelessness. There's no other way to put it. Nolan Arenado, and by the way, I'm all done with Statcast in terms of outs above average. It doesn't seem credible to me. I'm gonna go back and just use defensive runs saved as my measure. Nolan Arenado is -8 defensive runs saved. That's the worst among third basemen in the majors. And so I don't, we know there's problems at the plate. Are we looking at something now where it's like you can't even count on him to be a really exceptional defensive player at third base? For what he's done this year, you're like, wow. The second year in a row, the defense is on the wane. That's really concerning as well. So no, I don't know what to do. The players got to make plays. They know better. They can do better. With Arenado, maybe, he's just lost something. I don't know, but it's really weird to see him at the very bottom of the defensive run save put out there by the fielding Bible, which I think is very credible.
I think that's weird because I think you hit on something right there, which is that it feels like they should be better. Like it doesn't feel like
Yeah.
a team where you're like, okay, well, they got Burleson at shortstop. Obviously, that's not what I mean, but like at a certain level, all of these guys should be good. Gorman, to me, actually, I think Gorman has been a better second baseman than I thought he was going to be.
And him and Winter are an excellent double play combo. Yeah.
I know Gorman made an error yesterday, but generally speaking, I think Gorman has impressed me. He is better at second base than I thought it would be. I mean, you look at this infield and you think they should not be making that many errors. Like and we'll see about Arenado. That's the one thing you think, even if the bat's slowing down, you think you've got that. Right. So, yeah, I mean, certainly, and again, that's just 2 more years of the contract. But I think that certainly when you look at the defense and it feels, as you kind of touched on, it feels like carelessness rather than a lack of ability.
Right.
It feels like they're just missing stuff one way or the other. But I think it is becoming a problem. You talk about Lynn, like I think Lynn made an error, but like we got an email from Kyle Sharamataro, notices that Lynn has given up 34 runs and only 22 earned.
I know, isn't that crazy?
That's insane.
I know, isn't that nuts?
That's absolutely insane. One thing I want to touch a little bit too. To me, the defense is it's a problem they're either going to solve or they're not. And if they don't solve it, then they're not going to make playoffs. like the defense, to me, the defense is a solvable problem. I'm not sure the outfield offense is a solvable problem. Either it's going to work or it's not. It feels like defense is something. The defense feels like mistakes they are making rather than a deficiency of the team. And we'll see about Arenado.
No, I agree.
He could be the exception.
And I think it's understandable that a 22-year-old rookie shortstop who has so much talent that he's got a lot of confidence in his talent, that he would be over aggressive and getting a little jumpy. I mean, this is not exactly stuff where you look at and say, well, this is going to change my opinion of him. No, I mean, not at all. Sometimes we do, in fact, forget that he's 22 years old and he's played how many major league games? Not many.
So one thing I want to touch on too, that we got a note, Joshua Stuckey kind of emailed about this, about starting pitchers and the third time through the order. I think Sharamataro mentioned this as well. Joe Sheehan, our friend, has written, I think he said in his newsletter recently, when you try and eat innings, you're going to get the runs. If we have this idea of like, you got to get stars that eat innings, you got to start to eat innings.
Right.
But like generally speaking, when they go the third time through the order, you might get the innings, but you're also going to get runs that go with that. And I think we've seen this consistently with Lynn specifically. We've even seen it with Gibson, who I think has been really good. I don't mean that as a criticism of them, but that third time through the order, I'm curious how they balance this throughout the year, because listen, the idea that they needed to add innings was a big part of the idea of bringing in these 3 starters. But still, when they get in the 6th inning, like Gibson was good yesterday, but he was like, they needed to get him out of there in that 6th inning. And the problem is more and more as Marmol, and maybe this is a time to talk about kind of Marmol's moves on Monday night. More and more, I think he just keeps wanting to push them through that 6th inning, and it gets them in trouble. And I understand why. It's still just June 4th, right? You don't want to wear out the bullpen entirely, but I do feel, as much as we want the veteran guys like Lynn and Gibson and Gray to get you deeper into the games, it's just not that's just not the way people win games anymore. I'm curious what you think about how Marmol rides that moving forward, because I do feel like they're always trying to push all 3 of those veteran starters in through the 6th, sometimes into the 7th, sometimes to their detriment, and sometimes against to what basically the way most other teams are working in baseball right now.
No, and I looked at this. Funny you bring this up, because I looked at it this morning, and this is for like the entire Cardinals starting pitching contingent. The third time through numbers are horrendous. And so they do lose something when, and by the way, I haven't broken it down by individual pitcher, but I've looked at it from a group standpoint. Numbers are pretty ugly. I don't know what he does. They still need to cultivate, another relief source somehow. They're not going to have Middleton, it looks like. They got to keep their fingers crossed that Gallegos will be healthy and better. And there's at least a chance of that. But they've got to find a way to maybe get get stronger in the middle innings when they do pull a pitcher early, maybe earlier than they would prefer, because there's no point in letting the roof fall in, if you're staying too long with a guy third time through, because the numbers show it is definitely a problem. So it's just a matter of expanding your bullpen even more and coming up with a system. The way he's come up with a system at the back end of games when they're winning, he's got to come up with one or two guys that he can really trust and count on in those middle innings. I mean, I think the King's one of those guys. I think Leahy certainly can be one of those guys. Fernandez can be one of those guys. But then again, if you use them in the fifth and the sixth, when there's nights you can't use your three-headed monster, as Mason Wynn calls those guys, that means that Leahy and King and Fernandez, guys like that, actually have to handle late game action. And that's why I think if Gallegos is solid, just because he's healthy, I think it'd be a big boost, because he's a solid reliever that they can put in there in the sixth inning and they can count on. A guy like him, if he's that way, he don't have to be dominant. You can just count on him. That could potentially be a pretty big development for the Cardinals, if in fact he can be a solid reliever again.
And also, for what it's worth, you could also see how much importance that fifth starter is, because getting Liberatore back in the bullpen is a huge help.
That's right.
And letting him be that spot.
And they could use him because he's a third reliever. They could put him in that role, third left-handed reliever, I might say. They could use him in that middle relief slot, because I think that's really important. The Cardinals play a lot of close games, so the middle innings are pretty crucial, actually, And if you let them get away, it puts you in a bad spot, because you can't trust their offense.
And I think it's pretty it's pretty fortunate that Kyle Leahy and John King and Ryan Fernandez have been so good, right?
Absolutely.
So I think they've been very fortunate in that regard. I think Robertson. I think the presumption now is Middleton is probably not coming back. I think that whenever you get like third MRI, that's not a good sign.
Yeah.
Anytime those kind of keep popping up, I think this is a good time, however, because so much of when I look at the Cardinals bullpen, to me, I'm like, wow, it just looks so much better with Liberatore there, and Liberatore having his role and not being yanked back and forth. But of course, the only reason he was able to be back there was because Andre Palante was put into the rotation, and he was terrific in his first game. I'm curious, Bernie, watching that game or kind of looking into it a little bit, did you see? Because you were the when I heard that Palante was in the rotation, I was like, ugh, okay, I guess they're this desperate. But you correctly pointed out that actually when he's been in the rotation in the past, he's been fine. He hasn't been great, but he's been fine. Did you see a difference in him, how he was pitching in the start that week? Because I frankly got very tired of watching him pitch in relief. I feel like he was just thrown in to be double play guy, and it just didn't work out. What is it different that you saw in the rotation? Do you think it's something that can sustain?
I hope so. We'll learn more after tonight. Listen, and that's why I kind of stuck up for him, because he made 10. This was before they got Jordan Montgomery. He was basically in that rotation spot in 2022, and he had a 3.98 ERA in 10 starts, which is fine. Not great, but it's fine. And listen, I think a lot of it is mindset. Like he is confident when he's a starting pitcher. He believes he should be a starting pitcher. He believes with his variety of choices. Like he throws a lot of different pitches when he's in a starter, and he even throws variations of the same pitch when he's a starter. When you're a reliever, you got to go in there. It's like, oh, I got to throw my best pitch right now, and it's like you become kind of predictable. And his stuff in that realm where it's predictable what he's going to throw. He's not, as a reliever, he's not trying to set guys up. He's not trying to get them off balance. As a starter, he can mess with them. He can set them up. He can change things around from, batter to batter. Kind of hard to get him in a pattern. He just has a feel for starting pitching because he's confident in the arsenal of pitches that he has. And I think that really is what it's all about. He thinks like a starting pitcher. He wants to be a starting pitcher. He is a starting pitcher. His stuff does not play in the bullpen. You get some ground balls, but what else do you get? You get a lot, there's a lot of flaws with him as a reliever because the stuff's not there for that hardcore relief job. So no, I'm curious. I would like to see him take this and run with it. But then again, reading Derek Gould's notes today, Stephen Matz threw an exerted, bullpen session. He may be ready for a rehab assignment. It's like, oh my goodness, here we go. So I don't know. So Palante, even if he pitches great again tonight or really well, his time could be relatively short-lived as a starter, and that kind of saddens me actually, because I'd like to see him get some run just to see what he can do.
Yeah, and listen, you don't need him to pitch like he did last time every time. Like he was fantastic last time. If you told me he could get you in, if you could get 5 innings, 2 or 3 runs from Palante every fifth start, I would accept that.
Sure.
I would absolutely take that, and I think that's what you weren't getting from Liberator. That's Matz is someone again. We'll see if he comes back. And listen, Matz can be good. I think Matz could be good, but I feel like he's another guy you can't trust in that. But I don't know if as much as I like Palante's last start, I don't know if I trust him there either. I think that this comes back to the idea: do the Cardinals have a fifth starter, or do they not have a fifth starter?
Palante certainly got to do it, repeatedly, before you really trust him.
I mean, he was terrific in that
Yeah.
start, but we don't need him to be that terrific every start. You just
No, that's right.
kind of hang on.
That's right.
But I think that's the thing. So I'm curious. So one other thing I want to get to before we go, I want to look actually kind of the way we're talking about the Cardinals is so much different simply because they're tied for the last wild card spot. Like they're 2 games under 500, and that's not what the Cardinals should be. Like I don't think
that's right.
I don't think I'm being too. I know we were so dark on them a few weeks ago before they went on that win streak, but that win streak, that very impressive run against the Cubs, Red Sox, and Orioles, they're still 2 games under 500. Now, is there a good fortune that allows them to be tied for the wild card spot and only a game and a half behind the Padres for the second wild card spot? And it allows me, now that I've turned my book in, to make sure I'm going to be able to watch the Cardinals every night and not feel like my heart's being poured out of my chest, or like I'm discouraged. I want all, in a lot of ways, as frustrating as the last few years have been, and I would love the Cardinals to get back to the place where they're competing for championships every year. But for now, I just would like to enjoy my summer. I'd like to be able to play on a regular basis. And a lot of that has to do when you look around at the rest of the National League. I look at the Padres, I look at the Cubs, I look at the Giants, I look at the Diamondbacks, I look at the Pirates, I look at the Nationals, I look at the Reds. All those teams are within 2 games of the wild card. I don't know if I look at any of those teams, frankly, with a possible exception of the Cubs, and maybe at their best, if Carroll can get going, the Diamondbacks. I don't look at any of those teams and think, oh, wow, I don't know how the Cardinals are going to compete with those teams. Like, for all the flaws the Cardinals have, and listen, the Cardinals have the worst run differential of any of those teams, by the way. They have a worse run differential than the Mets do, for crying out loud. But I still find myself looking at the Cardinals and thinking, for all the problems we've talked about, for all the issues they have, I see no reason to think that the Cardinals should not be able to continue to compete for the wild card. And listen, we'll see if the Brewers play like this all year. I think the Brewers are a little bit above their skis right now. We'll see if that maintains. But when I look macro and take a step back from the Cardinals, for all the frustrations, for all the problems, I think it is not unreasonable to think this team should be able to compete for a playoff spot really deep into the year.
They should be in the hunt. If they suffer a couple of breakdowns, they lose a starting pitcher or 2, they're in trouble. That's the only
But
problem.
that's true of any of these teams. I think.
I don't know. I mean, the Cubs have had a pretty exceptional starting pitching depth, and so I think the Cardinals are more. Cincinnati has too, because they had a lot of injuries with their starters. I think the Cardinals are more vulnerable than most of those teams, so that's a concern. And I just don't know about how well their offense is going to function, because it was hot there for a while, but they're 3-4 on the road trip. If there's a chance they come back with a 4-5 record, hopefully for them, not a 3-6 record. But my thing is, like, I wonder, okay, is the hot streak kind of stalling to an end here? And so we may be having a whole different conversation next week. Who knows? Because that's the thing with the Cardinals. I mean, there's just no rhythm to their season.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of hard to like count on them. Like, I don't think they're kind of like as bad as they look at times. And I think this, when they won 10 out of 12, it was really, really fun and really entertaining. And they did beat some good teams. But was that just kind of a random hot streak? I don't know. I don't know what to make of them. But let me get back to what you said.
Yeah.
They should be in the hunt. They have enough to be in the hunt because it's a really mediocre National League. And one thing I get tired of hearing is that, well, the Cardinals don't beat good teams. Well, tell me who does beat good teams other than other good teams. Like before yesterday, there were 22 teams doesn't count last night. There are 22 teams in the major leagues. It has losing records against teams 500 or better. The Cardinals are just one in a very large pile of such teams. So this is not an exclusive thing to St. Louis Cardinals baseball. So when you're in there, I refer to it metaphorically because of my youth growing up on the Chesapeake Bay. The Cardinals are like, it's a bunch of crabs in the pot. And the Cardinals are in the pot. And they're trying to climb up the side, and they've got their claws flinging, and it's like, well, who's going to get to the top? Which crab's going to get out of there before we take the big crab trap and take it inside to steam the crabs? Like who's going to get out of there? It's crabs in a pot. They're one of the crabs. It's as simple as that. And, I just get tired. It's like, well, it's only because they're mediocre. Well, yeah, we know that. Okay, we know it. But who else is saying that about 6 or 7 other teams? So these are the times we live in. And if you're in the hunt, you're in the hunt. Yeah, don't get too caught up and tangled up in the weeds trying to dissect everything and giving very heady lectures about how this is not legitimate. They're not that good. This is the system they play in. They didn't design the system. They don't design the schedule.
The Diamondbacks got outscored last year, and I don't think any of their fans are like, well, we don't deserve this.
That's right.
Series. I'm like, get in. That's the goal, is to get in. I would love for, you see the way the Dodgers even construct their team, right? Like the Dodgers are really good, but they're not really trying to win 118 games. So they probably could, but they're like, well, no, we don't. We're not. We're just trying to win our division and keep everybody healthy and get that first round bye. But more than that, you really can't do. So you got to get in. I feel like now, when we talked about how pivotal this season was and how much it was a disaster, it looked like it was going to be, when it looked like they might finish last again. And listen, that could still happen, by the way. But I now feel like when you look at the National League and look at how the Cardinals, for all their flaws, measure up with the other teams that are playing for a wild card, when you look at all those teams, I think the Cardinals should be a playoff team this year. I don't look at it and say, oh, well, sorry, you ran into this hot. It's just the way it worked. You had to win 94 games to make the playoffs that year, and the Cardinals aren't a 94 win team. They're not a 94 win team, but they should be. With what they have and with what this season has been built up to be, they need to make the playoffs. So there need to be answers happen, because I think that's the sort of things that happen.
Well, I think there needs to be answers anyway. I mean,
I agree.
But I'm not. I can't go all the way there with you. I think they should be in the race. But I don't say they should win it, because they have a lot lot of problems.
Yeah, but so does everybody else. I think that's the thing.
Well, do they have an outfield that's hitting 207? Do these other teams have an outfield that bad?
No, they don't. But they're also outscoring the Cardinals.
Does other teams have 2 aging players who are in terms of power, it's pretty much kaput? I don't know. The Cardinals have a lot of problems.
Yeah, and yet here they are still hanging around.
They're there. Yep.
And this week,
I'm being negative. See, I'm being Mr. Negative. I'm sorry.
I'm just happy I got my book filed in the Cardinals last place. I just wanted to make sure I had some baseball to watch this summer. And so I've got that. I do feel like the Monday. Last thing, I guess we didn't really talk about. What'd you think of Marmol on Monday? What'd you think? Were you down on him or not?
Here's the deal. I'm going to make this really short, because if I walk through the whole inning, it would bore everybody.
I understand.
Listen, so he strikes out Alvarez, which was awesome to end the 7th. Okay, I don't have a problem bringing him out. So, well, wait a minute. Bregman's a right-handed hitter. Ramirez is a left-handed hitter. Bregman is much better, much better against right-handed. Bregman is much better against right-handed pitchers this year. Left-handed pitchers have given him all kinds of fits, and that even goes back to last year. So the traditional way we view these things is like, well, you got to go right. You got to throw a right-hander against him. If you go by the numbers, no, you don't. Actually, Romero makes sense. He made a bad pitch. He hit it out of the park, but it wasn't a wrong decision based on the numbers. What I would have done, though, what I would have done, and the next hitter in their lineup, Myers, he's the same type of guy. He hits over 300 against right-handed pitchers. So you're not getting an advantage by bringing a righty in against him. So, but by the time you got down to Diaz, though, the catcher who hit the 2-run homer and made it 6-4, that's when I would have made the move. And I'm trying to be fair. And you say, okay, Bernie, why would you have made the move? Number one, Romero was laboring. Number two, Diaz, unlike Bregman, unlike Myers, Diaz actually crushes left-handed pitching, and he struggles against right-handed pitching. There's a huge difference. That was the spot for maybe Kyle Leahy. That was the spot to play well, I need a right-hander to face this right-handed guy. I think if I would have done anything, if like going back and looking at it, the time to go get Romero is before he faced Diaz, because Diaz was like just made to order to do some damage in that situation.
I agree. I still feel like, and listen, he didn't have, I think he needs to trust. Well, certain, every manager has guys that they trust. They get the circle of trust, and and I feel like Fernandez was not available last night. I think people got lost on that. He was
right. That's right.
Last night. So,
and I think too, it's like, I was typing some thoughts about this before, for what I'm going to write at the, scoopsnetwork.com. I said, like, it wasn't outrageous that he stick with Romero. He obviously has confidence in him, as he should. It wasn't outrageous. And, we've got the fake outrage industry in America now, so there was no reason to be outraged. Was there a reason to scrutinize the decision and wonder, was there a time when it would have made sense to get Romero out of there? Yeah, absolutely. Which I've done. But I'm not doing it because like I'm ready to just fire everyone, send them to prison. I'm not doing the fake outrage thing because there's no reason to be outraged by it. To second guess it, first guess it even, absolutely. But you don't need, spare me the fake outrage. I'm just so tired of it.
So this week, I feel like they should be able to do some stuff this week. They've got 4 at home against Colorado, who, for the record, I think sometimes people forget how good Colorado is at home. Like a lot of times you feel like Colorado's this terrible team, but they're really good at home there. But this is at Busch. Colorado's actually been a little bit better lately, but that feels like a series that the Cardinals should have some. And they've got the Pirates at home, 3 at Wrigley over Father's Day, and 3 in Miami. We'll see how the last couple games against the Astros go, but if the Cardinals are the contenders that I think they actually can be, we'll know over the next 2 weeks. Because if this goes sideways in the next 2 weeks, then you've got Braves, you've got Reds, then things start becoming a problem. Right. I think you're in trouble then. Last question I have for Bernie. Sure. Really quick question. We've not talked about this yet. What do you think of the City Connect uniforms?
I like them. I know they get mixed reviews. I listen, call me old fashioned, and I don't think I am actually, but I have an appreciation for the birds on the bat logo. I think it's one of the most gorgeous emblems in sports ever. I don't need them to come out there in a clown suit. It does nothing for me. I saw like the Astros last night. I actually like that. I mean, that's a good look. There's a lot of them that are good looks. I look at the Red Sox and their City Connects. I'm like, what the hell is that? They look like UCLA. What does that have to do with anything? So, no, I'm fine with it. I liked it actually, but people, I know some people don't like it. Whatever, man. It's subjective. It's a personal opinion. Yeah. What about you? What about you?
I my goal was for them not to be embarrassing. I wouldn't say that I love them, but they're not embarrassing.
That's right.
That's kind of how I feel about it.
I agree.
I'm not going to buy one, but I never really liked the red practice jersey, the spring training jersey. Them being an all red doesn't quite look right to me. Yeah. It always feels a little spring training on that, but nevertheless, I like but I do like the hats.
I do too, and I've probably seen more criticism of the hats.
Yeah, see, I like that,
and I think the hats are great. Yeah. But I think frankly, not that I should talk because I'm old, but I think it's the older crowd. It's like, because there was a letter to the Post-Dispatch, like, it's St. Louis, it's not STL. It's disrespectful, that kind of stuff. The old people find it stuff to get worked up about, even though they don't have to. And I've been using STL as a shorthand in my columns for a long, long time, for years and years and years.
Of course.
I think it's a nice look, that STL. I like it.
Listen, I am inherently concerned about this stuff. Someone once asked me if I were a Major League Baseball player, what name I would have on the back for the Players Weekend. Remember the Players Weekend? You get the nicknames back there.
Yeah.
And I said my name would be Leitch. That's what I would put back there. I'm conservative about this stuff, so I like them to be streamlined. Okay, Bernie, we'll be back next
buddy.
Tuesday, June 11th. I think that'll be our last Tuesday show. We'll be back to Mondays after that.
Enjoy your vacation, man.
I will. The book's done. The book is not done, but it's turned in. I have to think about it for a little bit, so that'll be fun. All right, Bernie, have a great week. I'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Will.